I, 28-year-old female, have been with my now husband, 35-year-old male, for 6 years, and we got married around 9 months ago. Ever since we got married, he has gotten progressively more verbally hurtful. It has gotten to the point where I've started to look up divorce papers, and am searching for new places to live, but cannot decide if I should follow through. It started out as small bickering about random things that started to hurt his feelings, that never did before. But it was occasional and easily resolved. Then he started escalating and making very pointed attacks with his words. He would say things like, "You got your stupid wedding day. So why the heck can you not do XYZ for me?" in an aggressive, sarcastic manner, and would go on, yelling and cursing like that until I cried. I thought he loved our wedding day. He never once complained. And when I ask him if he felt left out of the planning or anything, he always says no and that he loved our day. But then when he's mad, he makes comments like this and I start crying, questioning if he ever enjoyed our wedding, or if he even wanted to marry me to begin with. Fast forward a few months later, we had a huge fight that got to the point where I wouldn't talk to him for a week and slept in another room. He just keeps picking small issues that were never a problem for 6 entire years, exploding and twisting them out of proportion, yelling at me, then blaming me for the reason he yells rather than taking accountability for his weird anger issue that started a few weeks after our wedding day. It's gotten to the point where when I cry, he will roll his eyes and get even angrier because now he's the bad guy and I am playing the victim, but I'm not. My confidence is crushed and I am genuinely hurt by his awful words, and he is ending the life of my soul. Long story short, I told him I cannot take another singular fight. We had been fighting at a level 7/10 at least 2 days per week for multiple months at this point. And I told him firmly that if we fight again, I am going to need a divorce because I cannot handle the emotional toll. If he won't talk to me about what is actually bothering him in a normal, calm manner so we can work things out, I can't be here anymore. This is not what I signed up for, and just because we are married, it doesn't give him the right to verbally abuse me. He eventually apologized and begged me to please sleep in the same bed at night and to stop going in the guest bedroom. He offered to pay for marriage counseling and asked me to stop looking at apartments and divorce papers. I instantly saw this as manipulative behavior, but since his recent explosive behavior is unusual / out of his character, I obliged. Things were okay the next few weeks. He never ended up looking for a marriage counselor, but he stopped having these sudden, intense overreactions. So I thought maybe he was doing some internal reflection or started to realize how he was affecting me. That was until this morning when we woke up to get brunch at our favorite spot. The weather was great, the sunroof was open, and our wedding song came on. I smiled and looked over at him, held his hand, said something along the lines of, "Oh," and started to sing it. I noticed he had this bland stare and was not at all engaged, didn't even smile. I asked what was wrong, and he told me he was annoyed that I was driving so slow behind this old person and asked why I wasn't going around them. That hurt. It felt like a total gut punch. I pulled my hand away and just got quiet and started to move around the old guy. And then he started to raise his voice and go, "Great, now what? What did I do wrong now?" I just kind of said in a low voice that he didn't do anything and to just forget about it. His immediate response was to start yelling, "What? Are you mad at me for not having the reaction you want? Sorry I didn't give you some random reaction you expected of me. Now you're going to make this a whole thing again, aren't you? And blame me for ruining your wedding song. And something blah blah." I kind of tuned the rest out and had a mental shutdown. I tried saying I wasn't expecting any response from him in particular, but that I also wasn't expecting him to talk about how slow I'm driving while I'm singing our wedding song and holding his hand either. I don't freaking know. The screaming got so bad I turned around and went home. I have been hiding in the guest bedroom ever since and crying so hard I have a terrible migraine. My heart is freaking shattered. The wedding song is completely ruined forever. I will never trust him the way I did before, and I cannot see myself touching him ever again. This isn't who I married. I don't know what I did to upset him. What's upsetting me the most is that I came from an hurtful upbringing and worked with a therapist for multiple years to ensure I broke the cycle. I was single for a long time before meeting my husband and did this whole self-love journey with the help of my therapist. When my husband and I met for the first time, I stayed friends with him for a year and a half before ever even dating him, because I was so selective about who I would include in my life on such an intimate level. We then dated/lived together for 3 years, before even talking about marriage. When we did get engaged, I prolonged our engagement for 2 years to make sure the cycle would be forever broken, and that I made the right choice. I wasted my best years and spent so much time being so careful with who I let in close to my heart, just for this to happen less than a year into my marriage. What makes me feel guilty is how unafraid, unbothered I am about the idea of being alone again and handing him divorce papers today. I would honestly prefer it after all of this and would find it much more peaceful. I have been hiding from him for months now, and it would be nice to just walk into a safe space again. The space I cherished so much and created for myself in my apartment before ever meeting him. At this point, I don't care about the symbolism of marriage because he broke his vows a month into it, while I uphold my end and just keep crying myself to sleep at night. This can't be the rest of my life. This can't. I won't allow it to be. I didn't do all this work to be treated this way. I'm also scared about what I would tell my friends and family if I did this. My father and grandmother paid for 90% of our wedding, approximately $30,000, because my husband's family is more financially restricted. Our friend's family gave us a lot of honeymoon money, and I am worried they would be livid if I signed divorce papers 9 months later. Would everyone stop taking me seriously as a person if I did something so erratic? Also, we are supposed to celebrate his birthday with his whole family and close friends this weekend, and go on a week-long vacation with my best friend a few days after. In a headspace like this, I almost want to go on the trip without him and just be with my best friend and not even show up to his birthday. I'm not going to because it's immature and drama-filled, but I just don't know what to do right now. Please help. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. My confidence is crushed. That's what he wants. He wants to make sure you won't feel confident enough to leave, now that he thinks he has you trapped. He does not. You sound very capable. If you are looking at places, you already have one foot out the door. Plan for his abuse to escalate, and then for the love bombing to escalate, possibly in fast cycles, when he becomes aware you aren't planning on sticking around. Don't listen to anything he says in either mode. He'll say anything to keep you, and will try to wear you down faster by getting even uglier. I'm so glad you know you can take care of yourself. That's a strength not all women have. Comment 2. It's only going to get worse, my friend. Your family obviously loves you very much. Please show them this post you wrote, skip the party, go on the trip with your friend. Have some enjoyment and peace for a bit. You will be in a much clearer headspace. You do not deserve this kind of treatment. Your husband is an emotional extremist. I know, I had one myself. He will escalate to physical violence. I get what you say about your own peaceful space and being okay being alone. When I got my own apartment, I used to embrace coming home. Good luck and much love. Please keep us posted. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So, 2 weeks ago, after that horrible brunch incident, I decided to take a big step. I packed a small bag and went to stay with my best friend for a few days. I needed space to think and figure out what I wanted to do next. I didn't tell my husband where I was going, just left a note saying I needed some time to clear my head. During those few days, I had a lot of time to reflect on everything that had been happening. I talked to my best friend about it, and she was incredibly supportive. She reminded me of my worth and how much I had worked on myself to break the cycle of abuse. It was comforting to have someone who understood and didn't judge me for considering divorce. While I was away, my husband called and texted multiple times, but I didn't respond. I needed to focus on myself without his influence. On the third day, he left a voicemail, sounding genuinely worried and apologetic. He said he realized how much he had hurt me and that he was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. He even mentioned that he had found a marriage counselor and scheduled an appointment for us. I was skeptical, but decided to give it one last shot. I went back home and agreed to attend the counseling session. The first session was tough. The counselor asked us to talk about our feelings and what had been going wrong. My husband admitted that he had been feeling a lot of pressure at work and had been taking it out on me. He said he didn't realize how much he was hurting me until I left. The counselor suggested we both take some time to work on ourselves individually before coming back for joint sessions. My husband agreed to see a therapist for his anger issues, and I continued my sessions with my therapist. In the meantime, I decided to go on the vacation with my best friend without my husband. I needed the break, and it was the perfect opportunity to clear my mind. The trip was amazing. We hiked, swam, and just enjoyed each other's company. It was the first time in months that I felt genuinely happy and relaxed. When I got back, my husband seemed different. He was calmer and more attentive. He had been going to his therapy sessions and was making an effort to communicate better. We went to a few more marriage counseling sessions, and things slowly started to improve. However, there was still a part of me that was unsure if this change was permanent or just temporary. I decided to keep looking at apartments, just in case. I didn't want to be caught off guard if things went south again. One evening, while we were having dinner, my husband brought up the topic of our wedding day. He apologized for the hurtful things he had said and explained that he had felt left out during the planning process, but didn't know how to express it at the time. He admitted that he had been harboring resentment, which had been building up and causing his outbursts. This was a huge revelation for me. It made sense why he had been acting the way he did, but it didn't excuse his behavior. I told him that while I appreciated his honesty, it would take time for me to trust him again fully. He agreed and said he was willing to put in the work to rebuild our relationship. As the days went by, I noticed small but significant changes in his behavior. He was more patient, more willing to listen, and less prone to anger. It was like he was trying to make up for all the hurt he had caused. I started to feel a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. But then, something unexpected happened. My father called me one evening asking if everything was okay. He said he had noticed I seemed distant and wanted to make sure I was all right. I hesitated but decided to tell him the truth. I explained everything that had been happening and how I was considering divorce. To my surprise, my father was incredibly supportive. He said he just wanted me to be happy and that he would support whatever decision I made. He even offered to help me financially if I decided to leave my husband. This was a huge relief, knowing I had my family's support. With this newfound support, I felt more confident in my decisions. I continued to work on my relationship with my husband, but I also kept my options open. I didn't want to feel trapped or obligated to stay if things didn't work out. One evening, while we were watching a movie, my husband turned to me and said, "I know I've messed up a lot, but I want you to know that I'm committed to making things right. I love you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this work." His words felt genuine, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope. We still had a long way to go, but it felt like we were finally on the right path. As for the upcoming conflicts, well, let's just say there are still some unresolved issues that we need to work through, but I'll get to that in a bit. For now, I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for dumping my boyfriend? After he made a sick joke about me and then trashed me to our friends' me. 27-year-old female, and my boyfriend, 24-year-old male, have been together for around 2 years with some difficulties in between. Yesterday, a friend, 27-year-old male of ours, asked in a small group if we were baby people, to which I responded that I'm more of a dog person. My boyfriend then decides to chime in with the question about whether we have heard of those women that leave their babies in bathtubs. Well, that's your answer about her, referring to me. He starts to laugh, and I go quiet due to being in shock at how nonchalantly he just insinuated that I could be a child aggressor. Because what in the world would possess someone to say this about the person they have claimed to want a future with? He texts me a few minutes later saying it was just a joke and that he's sorry if it upset me. I don't accept his apology, and furthermore, I don't understand how he can say that about me and still want to be in a relationship with me if that is how he sees me. He doesn't seem to care or understand why I'm so upset at this comment and why I can't accept that it was just a joke. So what steps am I supposed to take to move past him saying that about me when he isn't willing to give me a proper apology? All of my other friends apologized for laughing at his response the next day, and some of the women said they would never accept that sort of joke from their partners. Now for an update. We got into a spat about this comment when I asked him to explain the joke. He clarified that the joke implies the baby dies. I flipped on him and left to my own apartment. A text argument ensues, in which he sends a final message saying my things will be available to be picked up at an agreed-upon time. I picked up my stuff from his apartment at night with 0 words exchanged. So I guess that answered how to move past it. To add, first off, thanks to all those who gave helpful feedback. A lot of the comments are about me not enjoying dark humor and that I'm a killjoy and forced my friends to apologize, or that I should just accept his apology, etc. The point of this thread was that there was no real apology given, saying, "I'm sorry what I said upset you," as a sincere apology is ridiculous. It takes no accountability, so no, I won't accept that. Secondly, my friends sent me messages themselves to apologize for laughing at the joke, which they, in hindsight, didn't find funny the next day when sobered up. So yeah, no. I did not go around begging for some more half-assed sorries. Thirdly, I enjoy dark humor, however. As someone who knows me and knows I'm sensitive about this particular subject, you'd think he could refrain from making a joke about this one subject, no? Hence the question asking specifically, is there a way to move past someone targeting a sore spot with 0 awareness that it actually hurt my feelings? Henceforth, no actual apology. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I'll get downvoted, but whatever. This just sounds like dark humor, which many people are cool with these days. He probably didn't think twice about it not landing, and it sounds like he meant nothing by it. Clearly it hurt you, which is understandable. He should apologize for it and learn from that. But I also think you might be taking it a little hard. No one thinks that you would actually leave a baby in a bathtub. Comment 2. My partner and I are happily child-free, and this is 100% the kind of joke we'd make to one another. However, we both have a dark sense of humor, and it's been well established that both of us enjoy these kinds of jokes and aren't hurt by them. Given how upset you were by the joke, I'm guessing you and your boyfriend don't have a similar dynamic, and that contextually the joke was inappropriate. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. A lot has happened since the last post. After I picked up my stuff from his apartment, I thought that would be the end of it. But a few days later, he texted me asking if we could talk. I was hesitant, but I agreed to meet him at a nearby coffee shop. When we met, he seemed genuinely remorseful and tried to explain that he didn't mean to hurt me. He said he was just trying to be funny and didn't realize how much it would affect me. I told him that his joke was not only hurtful, but also showed a lack of understanding and respect for my feelings. He apologized again, this time more sincerely, and asked if we could try to work things out. I was torn. On one hand, I still had feelings for him and wanted to believe that he could change. On the other hand, I couldn't shake off the hurt and betrayal I felt. I decided to give it some time and told him I needed space to think. Over the next few days, I tried to focus on myself and my own well-being. I spent time with friends, went to the gym, and even started a new hobby, painting. It was therapeutic and helped me clear my mind. But then, something unexpected happened. One of our mutual friends who had been at the gathering where the joke was made reached out to me. He told me that my ex had been talking about me behind my back, saying that I was overreacting and that I couldn't take a joke. This infuriated me. I felt like he was trying to make me look like the bad guy to our friends. I confronted him about it and he denied it at first, but eventually admitted that he had said those things out of frustration. He apologized again, but this time it felt hollow. I realized that this wasn't just about the joke anymore. It was about trust and respect. I couldn't be with someone who would talk about me behind my back and then lie about it. I decided to end things for good. I blocked him on all social media and deleted his number from my phone. It was hard, but I knew it was the right thing to do. The fallout from this decision was immediate. Our mutual friends were divided. Some supported me and understood why I made the decision, while others thought I was being too harsh. It was difficult to navigate these relationships, but I stood my ground. I knew I deserved better. During this time, I also started to reflect on my past relationships and realized that I had a pattern of staying with people who didn't respect me. I decided to seek therapy to work on my self-esteem and learn how to set better boundaries. My therapist helped me understand that I'd been settling for less than I deserved. and that it was okay to demand respect and kindness from my partner. As I worked through these issues, I also started to think about my childhood and how it had shaped my relationships. Growing up, my parents had a tumultuous relationship. My dad was emotionally distant, and my mom was often critical and demanding. I realized that I had been seeking validation from my partners, trying to fill the void left by my parents. This was a painful realization, but it also helped me understand why I had stayed in unhealthy relationships for so long. One particular memory stood out to me. When I was about 10 years old, my dad forgot my birthday. I remember feeling devastated and unimportant. My mom tried to make up for it by throwing a small party, but the damage was done. That feeling of being forgotten and unimportant had stayed with me, and I had been trying to prove my worth to my partners ever since. This realization was a turning point for me. I knew I needed to work on my self-worth and learn to love myself before I could have a healthy relationship. As I continued therapy, I also started to rebuild my life. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones, and focused on my career. I even adopted a dog, which brought so much joy and companionship into my life. I was finally starting to feel like myself again. But then, out of the blue, my ex reached out to me again. He sent me a long email, apologizing for everything and asking for another chance. He said he had been going to therapy too, and had realized how much he had hurt me. He promised that he had changed, and that he would never make the same mistakes again. I was conflicted. Part of me wanted to believe him and give him another chance, but another part of me was scared of getting hurt again. I decided to talk to my therapist about it, and she helped me see that while people can change, it's important to take things slow and set clear boundaries. I agreed to meet him for coffee, but this time I was more cautious. I told him that if we were to try again, things would have to be different. He agreed and seemed genuinely committed to making things work. We decided to take things slow and see how it goes. As we started to rebuild our relationship, I noticed that he was making an effort to be more respectful and considerate of my feelings. He was more open and communicative, and we had some deep conversations about our past and what we wanted for the future. It was a slow process, but I started to feel hopeful. However, just when things seemed to be getting better, I discovered something that shattered my trust again. I found out that he had been seeing someone else while we were apart and had lied to me about it. This was the final straw for me. I realized that I couldn't be with someone who would lie to me and betray my trust. I ended things for good and decided to focus on myself and my own happiness. It was a painful and difficult journey, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I learned a lot about myself and what I deserve in a relationship, and I'm determined to never settle for less again. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for telling my girlfriend her cousin is a bad influence and refusing to go to a party? So today my girlfriend texted me that her cousin, 25-year-old male, had asked her and her sister to hang out, just to walk a trail and maybe get something to drink like a boba, etc. I had no issue with this, but I'm not a big fan of her cousin, as he has very fear of missing out. He will convince those around him to take drugs or make dumb decisions to be in the moment. Despite this, I try not to let it get to me, as she is the one that will make a decision whether to let the fear of missing out convince her or not. Right when she was leaving, which was later into the day, about 5 p.m., she texts me that they are going to a trail that's about 3.5 hours away, meaning they would get there about 8:30 p.m. I told her that seemed kind of far considering the time, because I've been to this trail, and it's more of a desert that gets super dark and unsafe after sundown, as you can barely see. She got mad at me as I did come off as mad, disappointed of her, even thinking this was a good idea, which I will admit I do think I overstepped. And after texting back and forth for about 5 minutes, she decided to stay home and not go. But once again, it was because I was repeating how unsafe it was. I believe I reacted wrong, but honestly, it just shocked me that it went from what I thought would be a late evening activity to a trail 3.5 hours away, so late with no preparation. So I'm just confused as to how bad I overstepped, as I believe my genuine concern was valid, but definitely not how I portrayed it. What should I do? To add, thank you everyone for commenting and all the advice. Even though most of the comments are in my favor, I ultimately think that what I should have done was mentioned the dangers, why I was worried, and that's all. If she decided to go after me checking in, that's her choice. In other words, I shouldn't have pushed on the danger, even if it was right. She has always had an issue with men, and feeling like they attempt to control women due to her father figure and other circumstances in her life. Because of this, I get the end of this stick. And even if I'm asking for something reasonable, hey, can you not call me an idiot while we argue? She will tend to not want to do it, or be mad as it is controlling of me. She has answered more, at least yesterday. Talked about it a bit. I said sorry, and how I saw that I had overstepped, even if it was coming from a place of concern. She stood her ground and didn't think my excuse was valid. Fair or not, I don't know. So I apologized and said I wouldn't do it again if something like this arose again, as I genuinely think I should have just done this in the first place. Continued talking, normal conversation, would still kind of give me a cold shoulder. We went to sleep. Just woke up. So not sure how she's going to respond today. She normally thinks clearly and is very smart, but when it comes to family like her cousin, she tends to not think the same. She's blinded in a way or another. No, she doesn't know that I'm not a fan of her cousin and his behaviors. Drugs are obviously Zaza, but as well as other things like MDMA, LSD, and I'm not sure of the name of the other drugs he takes. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Where I live, we have people disappearing or found dead weekly because they don't respect nature and how quickly it has changed over the past 20 years or so. Since you mentioned desert, I will assume the climate is very similar to where I'm from. You did nothing wrong and your girlfriend reads immature as heck. If that's how she usually is, you must have a lot of patience. People acting stupid should be told so. Comment 2. I live near hills that experienced hill walkers tackle in daytime, and at least a couple of times a year people don't make it back, and the rescue helicopters go out. Barely ever has it ended well. Most recently, a father and son who had both done the walk multiple times. It's drilled into us, and now my kids, never alone, never at night, never unprepared. You were spot on with your advice. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since the last post. So, after that whole thing with the trail, my girlfriend and I had a pretty tense week. We tried to move past it, but there was this underlying tension that neither of us could shake off. It felt like we were walking on thin ice, and any wrong move could send us both plunging into icy water. I could tell she was still upset about how I handled the situation with her cousin. And honestly, I was still feeling a bit guilty about it too. A few days later, her cousin invited her and her sister to a party at his place. This time she told me about it in advance and asked if I wanted to come along. I hesitated because I really don't like being around him, especially knowing the kind of stuff he gets into. But I didn't want to seem controlling again, so I agreed to go. I figured it would be better to be there and keep an eye on things rather than let her go alone and worry the whole time. When we got to the party, it was pretty much what I expected. Loud music, lots of people, and a haze of smoke in the air. Her cousin was already pretty out of it, and I could see a few people passing around what looked like MDMA. I tried to stay close to my girlfriend, but she was catching up with her sister and some old friends. So I ended up hanging out by the snack table, feeling out of place. At one point, her cousin came over and started talking to me. He was slurring his words and kept trying to get me to take a hit off a joint he was holding. I politely declined, but he wouldn't let it go. He started getting more insistent, and I could feel my frustration building. I didn't want to cause a scene, but I also didn't want to give in to his pressure. Just as things were getting heated, my girlfriend came over and pulled me aside. She could see I was getting upset and asked what was going on. I told her about her cousin trying to pressure me into smoking, and she got this look of disappointment on her face. Not at me, but at her cousin. She apologized and said she didn't realize he would be like that tonight. We decided to leave the party early, and on the drive home, we had a long talk. She admitted that she knew her cousin could be a bad influence, but she didn't want to believe it because he's family. She said she felt torn between wanting to spend time with him and wanting to stay away from the drugs and bad decisions. I told her I understood, but that I was worried about her getting caught up in something dangerous. The next day, we got a call from her sister. Apparently, after we left, things at the party got even crazier. Someone called the cops because of the noise, and a few people got arrested for possession. Her cousin was one of them. This was a huge wake-up call for my girlfriend. She realized that her cousin's behavior was not just a harmless phase, but something that could have serious consequences. She spent the next few days really reflecting on her relationship with her cousin and what it meant for her. We talked a lot about it, and she decided that she needed to set some boundaries with him. She still loves him and wants to support him, but she can't keep putting herself in situations where she's at risk. This whole experience brought up a lot of old wounds for her. She opened up to me about her father and how he used to be controlling and manipulative. She said that part of the reason she was so defensive about the trail incident was because it reminded her of how her dad used to treat her. She didn't want to feel like she was being controlled again, even if my intentions were good. Hearing this broke my heart. I never wanted to make her feel that way, and I told her as much. We both agreed that we needed to work on our communication and trust. I promised to be more mindful of how I express my concerns, and she promised to be more open about her feelings and boundaries. In the end, this whole ordeal brought us closer together. We learned a lot about each other in our relationship, and I think we're stronger for it. We're still figuring things out, but I feel like we're on the right track. Thanks for reading. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day!